Hello, folks. Welcome. So excited to see you here. While we let people and listeners trickle in, I will say hello to Gurman. Hello, welcome. How are you doing? What's new? How are things in your world? Happy to see ya.
Hey, I'm great. Nice to be here.
Yeah.
And yes, exciting times. Happy to chat with all the developers and anyone who have questions for the Ink team. We've been
hmm
up to lots of great things so far, and I'm really excited to share what's coming next.
Yeah, I think that that is exactly the format that we're searching for this to, or hoping that this will become and evolve over time. This will be, our goal is for this to become a series that Inc., the Twitter account, hosts monthly. Probably we're aiming for the first Wednesday of the month. So the next one would be May 3rd. And we'll always create an invite on Twitter so that you can set the reminder. You don't need to like set any other reminder in your calendars by any means. Like we'll remind you that it's happening. But yeah, the idea I think Kerman, we were talking that maybe it could be people bring their questions, get help, an AMA or just in general an opportunity for them to hear about new things happening in our ecosystem when it comes to ink and as well as releases too. So those are just like our ideas, but I'm really open to it evolving and iterating as we go and we see what the community of developers want it to become. So yeah, that's as it stands, but hey, who knows what it could become.
Absolutely, yeah, that was the plan. And again, we're using this first iteration to basically try things out. So if you have any feedback, how we can improve, we're always welcome to for your input.
Yeah, 100%. And we have a couple of people that are listening right now. The way that we would work it as well would be for folks to raise their hand in the Twitter space. If someone wants just to practice that, if they're new to Twitter spaces, this is their first one listening in, there are some emojis and icons down at the bottom on your phone. And what you do is you say, "Hey, I want to ask a question. I want to join the chat," and we will pull you up on quote unquote stage as a speaker, and you'll unmute your mic to then ask your question. So that's the format of how to use the Twitter Space. Is if this is your first one, but otherwise, if we don't have folks that are wanting to jump in immediately, we could. I would love to hear from you, Gurman, and your perspective. Talk to me about the 4.0 release. What's new? What features are we stoked about? What do we want to talk about and highlight of things that the team has recently built?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. So, Ink 4.0 is a big major release, and it basically aims at making Ink more mature and production ready. So, on the technical side, the storage was reworked. We introduced a more, easier API to work with, and we significantly reduced the contract size, the bundle size, and again, you can read more on the Ink documentation. There've been also quite a few minor patches and improvement over cargo contract tooling, and again to essentially manipulate with the contract from your CLI. And again, you can read the release notes on our GitHub repository, or I think there's also a blog post on Parity blog.
For sure. I gotta ask, what was your favorite thing that you worked on within that release? What was your favorite PR or project or just like piece of code that you were like, yeah, I am super proud of that. I'm stoked to see that be added to it and just sort of your baby when it comes to code from this release.
Honestly, I don't really remember what I did a month ago, but if I recall, uh, yeah, I basically joined Parity and Ink team roughly maybe like at the beginning of Ink 4.0 like preparation. So there was a lot of work done before me. But
hmm
the major PR that I was working on is allowing constructors to return a result type, because before that, if for whatever reason your constructor needs to panic or return an error, you should basically panic, and the caller doesn't really get any meaningful error. So I was working basically on making sure that the interface for constructors, which is the same as for messages. Yeah.
And you just alluded to something of when you joined Polkadot and Parity. I think it would actually be helpful for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. Lift the veil a little bit on your origin story when it comes to Parity and to joining the Inc. team. And it actually is something that is very relevant because the application window for such a program I'm alluding to is still open. And maybe we'll include a link to it in the chat for folks who are listening. But yeah, how'd you come to join Inc? What's the story there?
All right. Thanks for directing me there. Again, I
I
didn't
mean,
really
I'm
want to
gonna put
make.
you on the spot, right? You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
me. I'm
yeah. I didn't really want to make this like this Twitter space about me, but like a short
well,
introduction.
bummer.
Yeah. Is I actually joined Parity from the Polkadot Blockchain Academy. I'm one of the alumni, and actually I graduated from the very first cohort in Cambridge. That's when I met Mihi and the amazing Great and smart contracts team and other folks from Parity. And yeah, I think I graduated at beginning of August and I joined end of August, so it was basically a very fast move from me.
Yes, and I guess it was a fast move. You graduated, you joined, and you were a absolute success story of the Polkadot Blockchain Academy. The next wave is going to be in Berkeley, California, from July 10th to August 10th in 2023 this year, and the application window is still open. So polkadot.network/academy. Polkadot.network/development/academy. Anyway, if you Google it, the application window is open. We would love to see you apply. And yeah, I mean, it's an awesome onboarding opportunity and also an awesome recruitment opportunity. Hence you
Yep,
joining.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Done enough with the promo. So then let's talk. And of course, this is office hours. So if anyone at any point has a question, wants to um, ask a specific use case question for how they're using Inc. or how they would like to learn Inc., please be sure to raise your hand and we will bring you up on stage. But while folks are trickling in, I would love to hear from your perspective, like current things Inc. team is working on. What are things that people can be stoked to see upcoming? Maybe a preview of the roadmap, a preview of what incubator is, and just kind of like things we can be spotting on the horizon.
Sure, absolutely. So,
Thanks.
to be fair, we haven't really finalized the roadmap for Inc. For the next major release of Inc. But what we basically surely planned as is to roll out minor releases more often. So basically, you're gonna see like Inc. 4.1 is already out with few bug fixes and improvements, and you might see Inc. 4.2 maybe in the coming month or two. So we basically decided to roll out non-breaking changes iteratively in a fast pace to essentially provide more functionality and better developer experience in a more frequent way. But so far, like on the big scope of things that we plan to work on is obviously the initial support for XCM to allow and essentially to send to make a cross chain message within the contract. It's currently possible with chain extension, but it's a little bit cumbersome. We want to provide kind of native interface to do that. And what else? Yeah, we also introduced E2E, end-to-end testing interface, testing library, and we also want to work on it and improve the interface, make it more idiomatic. And maybe the last feature that was actually heavily requested by hackathon participants from Polkadot Globals, I think that's how it's called, Polkadot Global Series that was recently finished and the winners were announced. I think the most requested feature was multi-file support, And I think that's also in our to-do list. Again, I can't really give a precise time in the timeline for that, but there's definitely an issue on GitHub for that. So again, yeah, if you're from like one from the audience, if you believe that this is something that you would love to see, please go to GitHub and just react to this issue so we can prioritize it. I think that, yeah, that's kind of three major things that we plan to do next. But again, as I said, Social, Inc. 4 is now going to production, and we're now seeing applications built on top of it, well, using it. And what we really love to see is for you guys to go out there, try it out, see like what doesn't work right, what features are missing, and essentially let us know how we can improve it. And one example of such feature request or like a notice was from a team building on top of Aleph Zero. They noticed that currently Ink doesn't really have a U256 data type, which is very important for DeFi applications. And this is something that we immediately noted, and we're thinking about how we can address this issue. So again, essentially Ink will become more powerful only with the help of the community, and it's really up to you guys to help us shape it and improve it. And also want to give credit to all the teams in the ecosystem, from A-Star, Aleph Zero, who also actively contribute to the Ink repository, who open pull requests. And essentially Ink is a community thing, so if you have a feature request or you want to improve Ink, feel free to open a PR, and we will always provide guidance and support. Yeah. Sorry for taking so long for my.
No, I love that. That's a great answer. I think that what I hear from you is the commitment to the community and what developers want to see become features and optimizing how they're building with it. And I think that I mean, obviously is a beautiful thing. It's a it's really cool to see, and I encourage folks who are listening to go check it out. I think that that is a great first step for sure. Um, let's see. I saw Zoki, you were trying to get up on stage to maybe ask a question, but having trouble bringing you up. Um, let me just go ahead and I'll keep trying that while we continue on. Otherwise, um, yeah, I guess, Gurman, what's your perspective on like newbies? Where should they start?
Hello.
What's the learning journey? What's the way to,
Okay.
oh, you're up on stage though.
Yeah, hi. Hi. Thank
Can,
you. Can you hear
oh my
me?
God, amazing. Okay, yes, we can.
Awesome. Perfect. So I love what you are doing in the Ink team, and I actually have a question for like about newcomers. So, how can newcomers who are new to smart contract development get started with Ink? What are your suggestions or thoughts?
So there are two types of newcomers. One, the first kind is developers who have experience using Rust. For them, the transition to Ink would be, relatively easy and smooth because again, Ink is basically Rust domain-specific language. That's a fancy word for it. In simple terms, it's basically a bunch of macros which you put on top of your functions, and then they essentially generate intermediate representation and then compile to WASM binary to execute on chain. Again, it's a just bunch of macros. So the best place to go is use.inc and check out the documentation and examples. This is basically the easiest way for you to get started, get hacking. If you have any questions, you can always go to Stack Exchange. And we basically revamped the Stack Exchange and trying to answer as many questions as possible. Again, limited to our, capacity to answer questions. And I think you can also ask questions on GitHub, and we have Element channel, and yeah, also check out the A-Star documentation page with their awesome tooling like Swanky Suit. It's also an amazing tool. this is kind of a tool built on top of Cargo Contract, and it allows you to uh, automatically run a node and deploy a contract. And the last but not least, to go further, kind of intermediate level, check out OpenBrush. This is basically another set of macros that built on top of Ink macros that allows you to leverage token standards that's been around Polkadot, like PSP22, which is equivalent to ERC20, or PSP34, which is equivalent to ERC721, if you're familiar with those token standards. But again, if you want to get started, go to use.inc to check out our documentation.
That's kind of the catch-all in general to get started and to get going, and we'll kind of bring you to a level set in general about use cases and differentiation points in general. So for folks who are trying to understand, why a smart contract versus a parachain, etc., those things are all there as well. Thank you, Sophie, for asking that question. Really appreciate you. And of course, reminder to folks listening in, if you have a question, feel free to request to join as a speaker. We will bring you up on stage, and we would love to hear your question. This isn't office hours after all. We want, of course, to let the audience and listeners to drive it forward. But until we have... Oh, Aaron, do you have a question? Let's bring you up on stage. Go ahead, ask your question. Go for it if you can, or not. We will continue on.
No, I think I can. I just lost the audio for a second there. Hey, folks. Thank you for doing these office hours. I really appreciate it. So I actually... can I do a two-part question? Is that okay? Can I do one to Lauren and one to German?
Sure, absolutely.
Fine.
So, really been enjoying the YouTube shorts. Thank you for doing those, Lauren. I was wondering, do you have any more coming up soon? And if not, or if you do, what are they? And how can people request, if there's something they're confused about, how can they request a short on it?
All right, that's a question for Lauren, I think.
That's a great question, and I think that a PR, as German was just alluding to, would be the way to pull in or to request another one for us to know what people are commonly... We're creating them based off of what people are asking on Stack Exchange, and the things that we see most commonly asked about, and are essentially our frequently asked questions, but turning them into video format so that it's an easy digestible piece of content. But yeah, I would also encourage folks to ask on GitHub as well. That could be kind of the two sources of truth there. But yeah, we have some upcoming ones that actually are being filmed this week. We have one that is why it's not possible to use floating point data types in Ink. We're doing that one. And then what is in a contract, ABI or metadata. And then also how to correctly spell Ink, lowercase I, capital, or no capitals, and a exclamation point at the end, and why we made those choices, and actually some fun little trivia pieces in it. But yeah, in general, we're trying to get as much video content as we can out there, because docs are awesome. We also want to make sure that learners and potential devs out there that are wanting to get started with Ink have all the types of resources that they prefer to learn in. And yeah, I would welcome more ideas of what folks would like to see created. So please let us know.
Yeah. So for those, we currently don't really have a separate repository for like Ink shorts on YouTube, but I think the more suitable place to request a short would be Ink Docs repository for now. So Ink doc. Yeah, so we don't blow the main Ink repository with the request. So Ink Docs.
What, you don't want that flooded with video requests?
I mean,
Oh, I love
I
that.
need to
You know
clean
what? You're
up
so
issues.
right.
They're like, yeah, there are more like 100 issues open. I need to clean those up. Yes.
I know. Gurman is also the king of opening a new Notion page anytime he has an idea. So yeah, I think there's some validity to the point you're making. Okay, yes, good shout.
Okay, and then the question I have for German is: I know you've joined the Ink team pretty recently. You were just talking about that a moment ago. After you joined, like, what was the thing that you looked at and went, "Oh, this is really smart. Like, I love the way they did this." And also, what was one thing you looked at and went, "Oh, I would have done this differently."
Oh, that's a great question. So for the first part, like that's basically whole ink. I open it, the GitHub repository was like, wow, okay, that's smart. Because again, ink is just a bunch of macros. And to be fair, before ink, I had no experience working with macros. So I was basically learning on the go. But some of the stuff, that was done by the original creator of ink, Robin, who's currently working on WASME. And this guy is so smart, and some of the type system like reflections he's done is just the next level. And honestly, because again, the level of kind of understanding the Rust type system he had and macro system was impressive. And one thing that I was not sure about, I won't say like something I didn't like, but like was not sure about. Was maybe the fragmentation of modules, that we have so many modules and they're so interconnected and depend on each other. So it's very easy to just run into cyclic dependencies within Incrate. That may be one thing that I might refactor in future, but it's currently too much work to do.
Awesome! Thank you so much for answering that.
No worries. Yeah, thanks for asking questions. Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so let's see if folks, if you have more questions, please let us know, and we would love to answer them. I have one, and it is maybe someone else in the audience would maybe want to weigh in on it, but we'll see how we can tackle it ourselves. But it's around hackathons. Say that I want to participate in a hack, and I want maybe build my own project. What should I know? Where should I get started? What are some common mistakes that are made that we see?
Oh, that's a great question. We're actually going to record a video on that on Sunday, like elaborated, kind of response to that, like top 5 mistakes that Inc. team came across judging one of the recent hackathons. But to briefly answer your question, I think that the most common mistake is over-engineering the interface. So what you really need to start with is not your smart contract, but your UI. And then like you code the basic UI, the front end. And then it will help you to understand what kind of data your smart contract needs to consume and produce, well, return back to the caller. Because, remember that contracts are immutable, and even though you can upgrade them in Ink using set code hash, that requires some extra setup and some extra consideration, well, design consideration beforehand. Again, in order to avoid this over engineering and essentially unnecessary iterations of rewriting the interface, again, start with your front end and then move onto smart contract development. Oh yeah, and please don't use strings. Just try to avoid them as much as possible. Uh, yeah, because we've seen so many applications just using strings, whereas like using a plain byte array would be more efficient.
That's a hot tip, honestly. Yes, that's definitely a common mistake we see and have seen before. And hackathons, where can I learn more about where one would be, or in general, how I can find a team of people who might be wanting to build and learn and start a project with folks? We have some hackathon folks in the audience. Maybe someone wants to. Aaron, I see your hand up. Do you want to speak more on it, or who wants to be my hackathon ambassador?
I wasn't volunteering to be a hackathon ambassador. I actually just wanted to ask a
Zoph
question.
is
Something Herman just said
okay.
about the mutability of contracts. Like obviously, like that's once something's on chain, then it can't really be changed. So it's not like like a regular computer program where if you've got a bug or something, you can just push a fix. So what's like the best practices with Ink smart contracts for testing or for like validating the contract before you put it on chain?
Oh, right. Sure. That's a great question. Again, start small and then grow your contract iteratively. And again, to avoid having bugs in production, you always have a testnet like for Coco, or you have testnet on A Star and Fala and Aleph Zero. But you also have a local node, substrate contracts node, which is basically just a raw substrate node with maybe just a balances and balances palette and palette contracts that allows you to basically deploy a contract locally, see how it behaves, connect with your UI. What else? Obviously, do thorough testing. We now have unit testing library, and we have end-to-end testing library. And please test your contract, cover all the edge cases. Also, to think like a good thing to think about is modularity. Maybe it's better to modularize your contract, split into multiple contracts, and store some of the states in a separate contract, and do cross-contract calling. Think about upgradability. Also, if you think that you would need that in future, and again, just do multiple iterations of testing and development, and start with small increments of introduction of features and test those. Test all the edge cases. That's the only way you can ensure that. That's the only way to minimize unexpected behavior in your smart contract.
Nice. Those are some like strong, in general, best practices, I would say, for coding in general. So yeah, I like that. I am curious if we have this like listed out anywhere as a checklist for folks as they're building their and testing out their first one, because we kind of just you throw it out there. Don't use strings. Let's expand on that. Like why? Why is that not what why is that just like a tip that you give in general to folks? Can you just dive deeply into that for a moment?
Sure. Can you just repeat the question?
Why not to use strings?
Why not use strings? Right. Again, essentially, string, if I recall correctly, is basically an abstraction of a character array, which again encodes to byte array, and yeah, it's the way the string is handled within the memory, and long story short, it's basically inefficient in terms of memory to strings. I think we have a question.
Yeah, it looks like we have Nikos who's joined, but thank you. That's a perfect explanation memory wise. I just don't want to make the assumption that folks would totally understand that from the get go. So I appreciate you diving into that and expanding it a bit further. Nikos, welcome to the stage. What question do you have?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
There's a bit of background audio,
Okay.
but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Thank you for doing that, German and Lauren. My question is something that people keep asking me, and I don't really know how to answer it, which is when the someone who is developing in ink is decides, understands that it's time to move from ink to a parathread that is coming soon or to a parachain. When his program is strong enough to go to a parathread or to a parachain, or not strong enough, so he decides to stay in ink. What would you advise a developer?
Yeah, so if I understand a question correctly, you're essentially asking when is it sensible to stay ink, or when's the point when developers should probably move to a parachain or parathread? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. So for ink, we have kind of two use cases. First one is the primary development tool, when you essentially only you only aim at developing uh, decentralized applications on top of existing parachains, like DeFi application, NFT marketplaces. And then we have a second use case. Ink is a prototyping tool. And with this case, you might be an early stage startup, and maybe you don't have enough funding or resources at the moment, and you just want to test out your idea. So it's far easier and faster to basically bootstrap a quick and decentralized application with Ink and the front-end libraries deployed into one of the parachains. Depending, on your use case, you might deploy it on Pallet. If you have off-chain execution, you might deploy it on A-Star if you have classic on-chain execution, or you want to benefit from interoperability with EVM. And then you essentially test out your user idea, you collect the feedback from users, and then you go to investors, you already present them with the data, and then you secure funding, you hire more Rust developers, Substrate developers, and then you essentially start developing the parachain. And the benefits of that is that currently there's no a direct transition way of moving from Ink to a parachain development or substrate development, but some of the external modules and structures, like you might introduce in Ink, you can essentially reintroduce them in your palette. For the first use case, you might just essentially start building a dApp, thinking you only need a dApp, and maybe later down the stage you realize that you need this extra performance, extra customizability, extra extra control over intrinsics. That's when you might just accidentally realize that you need to move into substrate development. Again, it varies case by case, varies on your use case, varies on your financials and runaway of your project. But yeah, Ink is a lightweight tool essentially, and that's how it's intended to be. Does it answer your question,
Thank you.
Nikos?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's a common question that I think is important to continue the dialogue on too. The customization piece of like, well, what do I want to create that is special or unique, or what could be built off of other parachains in general? And so how do we optimize and utilize the ecosystem in general? And I really appreciate us having this conversation in general. Thank you, Nikos, for the question. Sasha, I see you wanting to ask a question. I'm gonna bring you up, and it looks like it is processing. Sorry to be singing, but it looks like it is loading, and I'm filling the space. It is connecting.
Right.
Actually, while we're waiting for Sasha, Zophie, I kind of alluded briefly that you were going to be able to tell us about future hackathons for folks to find a team to build and start on a project. Would you be able to shout those out for listeners who might be curious about something that's local for them or is an online hack that they could be a part of?
Sure. So I'm very happy to talk about hackathons anytime. We actually have 3 coming up where you can use your ink knowledge. Um, 2 of them are starting in April. One is the Encode Polkadot Spring Hackathon, where I think is starting on the 11th of April. The other one is the Web3athon. Both of them will include challenges from Astar and Interlay together. And then in June, I know of the next edition of the Polkadot Global Series, which is going to be an APAC edition this time. It's going to be in December, and there are a bunch more coming up. So, and now I'm gonna do some shameless promo. If you go to dot.ly/hackathon calendar, you can find the ones that are happening in the future. So feel free to join and take a look at those.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, what's more fun than a hackathon and building with your friends? I don't know. That's a rhetorical question. Okay, Sasha, welcome to the stage. So happy to have you here. What's your question?
Hey guys, thank you so much for putting this together first off. So my question is around Also, like for me, one of the superpowers of ink is the ability to actually write contracts that could eventually communicate with the runtime of the chain on which the contract is, living on. Mm, and as far as I know, the only way to do that is using chain extensions. There's an issue that's opened about 2 weeks ago about kind of reworking the API around chain extensions. I wondered if you, German, had any comments on like what the future of using this superpower of ink looks like.
All right, sure. That's a great question. Again, that's one of the kind of unique selling points for Ink that you can essentially leverage the unique functionality of the parachain that your smart contract lives on. And well, we currently have this with chain extensions, but that requires some extra work from the substrate developers to expose certain functions to be called from Ink. And Ink also requires some extra setup to make those functions callable from the contract. And then we also see some feedback that it's not really idiomatic and a little bit confusing. So we're currently reworking that and simplifying the interface. And the long-term goal, the ultimate goal that I think that Alex from the Pallet contracts team been talking on is that what we want to have is that you can essentially export your chain spec and then plug it into a macro, and it will generate essentially interface, the callable interface that you can use in your Ink smart contract. That's kind of long-term goal, but again, I think for now we're just doing it iteratively. We're trying to simplify the interface, trying to minimize the amount of boilerplate code you need to write to leverage this feature. But also, speaking broadly on chain extensions, I think we have a great future for Ink in the ecosystem, utilizing this feature because Ink is going live on multiple parachains and other standalone blockchains. We're already live on Aleph Zero. I think we're going to be live on A start tomorrow, after tomorrow. I think, yeah, there's been an announcement. And I think File is also going to introduce Ink on their mainnet soon. And yeah, we'd love to see like what those parachains have to offer in terms of chain extensions. And you can essentially expose a certain unique functionality that your parachain offers to a smart contract developer. And I think that's something that we haven't seen in space. Does it answer your question, Sasha?
Yeah, sweet. I'm really excited to see the future of what the API can look like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sasha, for your question. Really appreciate you. Aaron, popping it to you.
Yes, I see it's building off kind of what Sasha was saying there. So I know at the moment we can do kind of cross-contract calls. So if like you got multiple contracts deployed on the same, like parachain, for example, they can like call out to each other. But if we're gonna have kind of like chains that have these chain extensions where you can use some of the unique kind of abilities of the parachains, is there anything on the roadmap for us to have kind of XCM between Ink smart contracts? Like, could I have a contract deployed in one parachain that's like using the chain extensions there to do something really smart, but can also then call out to another smart contract on a completely different parachain to use like unique features of it?
Yeah, again, that's a great question. I think I did mention the initial support for Axiom in the beginning. It's in our feature list, and yeah, that's essentially our intention to support cross-contract, cross-chain calling in the future.
And that'll be like just built into because I know we can kind of do it at the moment. I know there's a couple of like hackathon projects I've seen which have used the contracts extensions to allow to add XCM functionality for it. But this will be something that'll be built into the actual like contracts palette, so it'll be like base level.
Again, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to have Axiom at the base level, and again, I don't really have much details on the specific API that's going to be, but what we aim at is to have like to make it as smooth as just a regular, cross contract call within the single parachain. There might be some extra parameters needs to be specified to call a contract in a separate in a different chain. But you also need to bear in mind that with the chain extensions, that also introduce extra complexity, and because you also need to bear in mind that if you need to know about this, the functionality that that the contract on another chain leaves like has to offer, because if you try to call a contract that exposes chain extension that actually is not there, then that can introduce unexpected behavior. So there are like a couple of edge cases that needs to be considered beforehand. But again, it's on our roadmap, and we'll keep the community posted with the updates. Again, I've seen lots of questions about that, so it's a great thing to hear from you guys that you're curious about this, because again, that helps us to prioritize our roadmap.
That's awesome. Just in terms of kind of like being careful about the functionality and features that another smart contract may have. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, like for pallets and things, like there's a way to get like metadata of what the different extrinsics are and what types that the extrinsics expect and things like that. Like I think that's how Polkadot.js like builds out its UI. Is there something similar for Ink smart contracts?
Actually, yeah, we have a metadata, and currently, this is the PR I'm currently working on, and I'm working on actually persisting the environment of the smart contract within the metadata. And one of the fields of the environment is a chain extension, and yeah, so that's going to be in the metadata of the smart contract. Yeah, I think does answer your question.
Yeah, that's, and I'm really excited for that. That's going to be the ability to do XCM calls between kind of smart contracts on different parachains, and being able to kind of introspect what's available in each one is just going to make composability so much easier, and like just open up so many opportunities. I'm very excited for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love it. I think we are subtly alluding to topics that we will be able to announce in future office hours as well. So I look forward to the May edition of this. And also something before we end today, I would love to talk to, and for you to speak a little bit about a new initiative that's funded by the Polkadot Treasury's bounty program that we're calling the Incubator. And if you could kind of talk about what that is, what folks who might be curious to apply or learn more about it. Kind of just speak about that.
Is a question for me, for Aaron?
Oh, I would say you probably. I mean, if you.
Oh, yeah, all right. Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. My bad.
It's been a long day. All right. Yeah. So Incubator is initially started by another Polkadot Academy alumnus, but also got a lot of support from some of the stakeholders in the ecosystem. And this is an initiative essentially aiming at bringing builders and auditors together, and helping them to build on top of build cool products on top of Ink. And for auditors, that's essentially help them to understand better Ink, and essentially build a sort of auditor community around Ink ecosystem. To talk more about what Incubator entails, that you'll get mentoring from the key players in the ecosystem, substrate ecosystem. We have folks from Aleph Zero, we have folks from A-Star, Parity, and you'll also get a financial support for marketing and hiring. And yeah, I think that's a great initiative. And applications are open. And please, 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 do not hesitate to apply. We'd love to see projects to be built on top of Ink, and it also helps us to test out Ink in production and find out what's missing, what needs to be done, and what needs to be improved.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we will include a link in the thread of the threaded tweet. It's use.inc/ubator, incubator. Awesome. Well, yeah, I think it's the two different tracks are really interesting, the builder and the auditor track. So yeah, listeners, please be sure to check it out.
Absolutely. Again, I think we have the link on use.inc.
Yep, it's there. It's in the, yeah. But folks, if there are no other questions, then we can, I suppose, wrap up for the day. I'm so happy to have all of you here. Again, we're projecting to have these the first Wednesday of the month, and we want it to be an open dialogue with the community for folks to bring their questions, to share their projects, their wins, their things that they're really excited about building, things that they're frustrated and have questions around, and for this to be a space for us to learn together collaboratively, to build community, and to celebrate using ink in innovative and imaginative ways and all things smart contracts. So thank you again for listening. Gurman, thank you for being our first co-host. You are a wealth of knowledge and so appreciated. Again, reminder, apply to PBA Wave 3 in Berkeley. Gurman is our success story that we love to highlight and showcase. And I suppose, Gurman, is there anything else that you want to shout out for today?
Again, as I said at the end of Dot Social, again, Ink is for you guys, and it's a community thing. And what we'd love to see for you guys is to try it out, break things, and tell us how you did it.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe next time we want to hear some breaking stories, and we'll showcase from the community some fun ones. I love that idea. Okay. Well, then stay tuned, folks. We will see you next month. And thank you for joining our first ever office hours.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.